this video, I'm going to take you to an enchanted forest where we ask the question, do you really need a tripod for landscape photography?
Whoa, look at that. Absolutely tremendous. So I'm sure this is a very flattering angle under my chin. Today we've come out to a place that I'm going to call Chuntering Ponce Waterfall, just because I don't want to give away the name of this place lest it become overrun. And I've done my research on this place, and it's all about the waterfall usually, but for me it's about the journey to the waterfall, because a lot of the shots that I saw online featured these spectacular trees that are just clutching on to these boulders for dear life, and I love this kind of thing. It's very easy to photograph. And then the other reason why I picked this particular time is because tomorrow the forecast is telling me that between 6 AM and 9 AM it's going to be foggy, and if I can get a shot of just this, even if it's just this, with a foggy green forest in the background, I'll be ecstatic. But I suspect, I haven't even gone as far as the trail goes yet, I suspect that there are many more of these characters dotted around the creek that I can use as a main subject, and even better if I can get the creek tumbling down the valley in the background. So we'll see. I still got to do a bit more exploring, but already I'm very happy with this subject, and I've already got many compositional ideas that I can create with this kind of tree.
Now, when it comes to landscape photography, there are obviously times when you've got no choice but to use a tripod, you know, for long exposures or focus stacks. And I will be using a tripod for some of the shots in this video, but one of them, and perhaps maybe the best shot, was shot handheld. But can you tell the difference?
Right, so this is about as far as I can hike up the trail. The trail ends at the waterfall, and if I was just after a waterfall picture, this is where I would get it. But as I've explained on the way up here, it's more about the journey and the amazing subjects that surround this valley. So, I mean, I'll take a picture of this, but I'm really not that bothered, to be honest. It's just be rude not to, right? So I'm going to take a shot of it, but then I'm going to head right back down the river to those really cool gnarly trees. I'm just a sucker for gnarly trees. And there's all these other waterfalls that are just cascading down these cliff walls to join this creek as well. So I feel like there's some potential there. But anyway, I'll take a quick shot of this, and if it turns out to be any good, here's the shot.
Well, it was an okay shot, but I knew that I could do better in that magical forest that we'd seen on the way up.
So not surprisingly, I'm back at this super gnarly tree. I just love it, can't get enough of it. And what I'm doing is just collecting ideas, just a sketch pad of composition. So I've got the camera handheld, I'm not wasting any time with the tripod, and I'm just shooting it from all angles, 360 degrees. But then I'm also getting below it, so I'm kind of down on this trail, shooting up towards it, and then I got way up on the hillside and shot down towards it and the creek behind me, so that I've got not just a 360 but also a different elevation, looking up, looking down, close, far away. Tried a whole bunch of different compositions, and within about 5 minutes I managed to cobble together this eclectic collection of badly focused and poorly exposed test images. So we'll just see, maybe one of those will be worth shooting with the tripod. I'll just go and have a look through them now, and if I find one that I really like, then I'll pick that. But really, I'm kind of holding out for tomorrow morning in the hopes of getting missed, because can you imagine this thing just separated from the background? I mean, I actually really love that background. Just look how bright those green leaves are. They're just like neon green. So I would still like that to show up in a shot, but there'll be something about fog or mist that will just really simplify the composition. There'll be less clutter, and it'll have that mystical, magical quality to it that you just know that I love.
We were just loving this forest, and we had the entire place all to ourselves. Well, just us and 6 trillion bugs.
You look really good in your net. Did it work?
Yeah, it's working right now.
They didn't get you?
No.
Oh.
They just crawl up my neck right there.
Yeah, that's... You need like a cap or a wide-brimmed hat, and then it'll flare it out a bit so they can't get on you through the net.
They can do that?
What's that on there right now? That's a black... Maybe the black flies, but I think maybe the mosquitoes can get their little proboscis through and penetrate. That's not good, is it?
No.
Anyway, right, so I think I'm done with my sort of recce and my collection of test shots, and I am going to be a complete snob, and I'm not going to shoot one for reals tonight. So we're going to get back to the camper, find somewhere to park up and spend the night, not too far away so we can get back early at 6 a.m. And then I'm going to get up, come back here. Are you going to get up?
Yeah.
Are you going to come in for the fog?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm impressed. We'll see if that actually happens. You know, you say that you will, but...
What time are you coming?
Well, I'm going to have to get up at 5 because I've got to have a coffee and a plop and all that business. Yeah, so then get here for 6. Although, if I look out of the window and there's zero fog, then go back to bed if we can come here later on. Is that a black fly? Get off me, you bastard. Anyway, so that's the plan. We've got a lovely Caesar salad to look forward to tonight for dinner.
I love those.
And then it's up at the crack of dawn.
Better go to bed now.
What time is it?
Judging by the clouds, it's about 7:42.
You just looked at your phone, didn't you?
I don't have it on me. I'm in nature.
You're saying 7:42?
Yeah.
Right. Oh, not far. 7:22. You were 20 minutes off.
So we got cosy in the camper for our deluxe supper.
So we've just demolished a giant Caesar salad, and naturally we're polishing it off with some dairy milk mini egg version. Have you guys seen this before? Control yourself. Control your urges. We've eaten half of the bar. The bar is massive. It's a 200-gram bar.
We're sharing, so that means 100.
Well, I like your logic, but it does eventually, but not all in one sitting. Let's save that for breakfast.
No, I can't have chocolate for breakfast.
You can always have chocolate for breakfast. Well, you have coffee. It goes brilliant with your coffee.
I don't like chocolate for breakfast. I have rules.
All right, so I'll just have it then. I'll just have it for breakfast.
Well, why don't you let us both have what we want and I'll eat half of it now?
No, because we've already had half of the bar now. We've had 100 grams of chocolate. Very sweet chocolate. I'm not sure if I like it, actually. Hey, put that down. Put it down.
You don't like it?
I said I'm not sure if I like it. I'm still mulling it over.
You know what you're going to do? Try another piece, see if you like it.
I will. Tomorrow morning for breakfast. See, this is the difference between you and me. I've got more self-control. I can savour it, whereas you just gobble it down like a wolverine.
It's all I've got left in life. It's my guilty pleasure.
It's all you've got left in life.
Food-wise, take away my gluten. I can't eat you.
I mean, you don't drink anymore.
No.
You don't smoke.
No.
You don't eat gluten.
I don't do drugs.
Apart from Benadryl, quite regularly. If you're watching Benadryl, get in touch. But, you know, chocolate is...
I need it.
It's to be savoured.
Depends who's asking.
No one's asking anything. What do you mean asking? What?
Well, that's how you like to eat it. I like to gobble it. That's how I eat chocolate.
Oh, God. The comments. Looks like a galaxy or something, doesn't it? Like those are the stars in space.
I coughed on it. I should probably eat it.
No. I think we've had enough. I think we've had enough chocolate, love. You're a creature.
What do you mean? What was the sound effect?
So I'm kind of torn because we could just drive home, or we could spend the night and hope that forecast is legit. The problem is, though, the reason why I'm torn is I just checked the Windy app and I checked this spot right now, and it's not looking like it was looking a few hours ago. But when I put in the name of the creek, then it comes up with the prediction of fog. So I don't know what my chances are of getting that fog. But recently, the last week or so, wherever we've been, we've woken up to fog. So I think there's a good chance. So should we just spend the night?
It's quiet here. I love it.
It is quiet, isn't it?
I'm staying here.
Until you burp.
And like a couple of old giffers, we went to bed and had an early night.
We've had a pretty good day so far, haven't we?
It's been good.
But I think I'll just turn the light out and get to sleep, right?
Hey, would you read me a bedtime story?
Well, you're a bit old for bedtime stories, but all right, I think I could just read you a few pages of Chasing All with Gavin Hardcastle.
But that's all you ever read me.
It's a really good read.
I've already read it.
There's a link in the description. Good night.
Good night.
Oh, God! You ate the same thing as me, except for another 50 grams of chocolate.
Well, that'll do it.
Oh, God. Good night.
Good night. Sorry. Oh, that's gonna itch when it dries.
Oh, that's good. Well, it's 5:45 a.m. I've had 4 hours of sleep, and I do have a face like Brian Stelter trying to get into a nightclub. He's not getting in. But I'm quite depressed, actually, because I've looked out the window. There's no fog. No fog. That forecast was absolute bollocks. What have you got to say about that?
I think I'll go back to bed.
So yeah, it's quite depressing, but at least I've got a chocolate breakfast, which I saved last night because I'm not a gluttonous pig.
I didn't eat it. It was a joke.
What do you mean?
I still have half there.
Where?
Right there.
In here. Oh, you do? Yeah, you didn't scoff it all, huh? Enjoy your breakfast.
I don't want it for breakfast. I'll have it for dinner. I've got rules.
Chocolate and coffee. Nothing better. Anyway, I'm going to finish my coffee, have a plop, and then I'm just going to head out anyway because I'm here now, aren't I? So even though I don't have the fog that was the whole reason that I wanted to come out here, I didn't take that serious shot yesterday. I just took all those crappy test shots. So I'm going to have to go back in there and at least get one proper shot. And you never know, maybe the fog will show up.
Crossing my fingers. For fog.
We had a bit of a rough night because the holding tank is full of sewage. And so there's like a stink pipe that goes up and through the roof so that it can vent some of that stink. But the problem is, when you open all of the vents, which we usually do so that we can get some airflow going and cool us down because it's really quite warm, that just sucks some of that smell back into the camper, so it just becomes a stench box. Normally it's windy enough that the wind just carries that smell away from the stench pipe, but it just carried it directly into our nostrils last night, and that was quite grim. What's your face like?
Well, I've had 2 hours of sleep, and I've got a face like an evicted puffin.
She does, actually.
Puffy.
A cute one, though. They're kind of cute, aren't they, puffins? Even if they've been evicted.
Don't look at me, I'm puffy. No, not that close.
Well, I guess we better get down into the forest and see if I can at least get a shot. But I have a feeling that I'll be killing time waiting for that fog to show up, so it's a good job I've got a very interesting book to read while I'm down there. I'll take that with me. Right, should we bugger off?
So we hit the trail again, and you know exactly what I was after.
So I'm back at this gnarly forest full of twisty, gnarly trees. I absolutely love it. And I'm a bit sad that there's no fog, but it's still a spectacular spot, and I think I can get at least a couple of decent shots. And the first thing I want to do is get a shot of this root system. I just love how these trees, they're growing on rocks. There is no soil, so they've just figured out a way to cling on and survive. And it's laid bare for all to see, and I just love it. Usually that's just buried underground, but not here. It's out on display. So what I've decided to do is a vertorama. So basically it's a panorama that is horizontal shots, but the composition is a vertical shot. And what I've decided to do with that panorama is make it a shallow depth of field panorama. And what that means is it's going to be multiple shots with a soft focus on the background. The background will be blurred out, but the trees themselves will be super sharp. So I'll use a really wide aperture of f1.8, which I can get away with on this 55mm lens. And I'll just take extra pictures that are kind of out of the frame, even if most of what's in that frame is completely blurred, so that when I stitch it together, I can have a much wider composition than a 55mm lens will actually give me. So I'll show you my idea on the back of the camera and we'll see if it works out. Okay, so what you're seeing from the camera right now is what I can get with a 55mm prime lens that has a maximum width aperture of f1.8. And so what you'll find is if you want that beautiful background blur, that bokeh that you see on things like portrait photography, what you need is that super wide aperture. And typically these types of lenses that give you that background blur, they don't tend to be wide angle lenses. I mean, sure, you can get, I think Sony does a 1.4 24mm, but even then the background blur it does not look the same as these much tighter focal lengths like a 50mm or at the widest usually a 35. Those are the types of prime lenses that will give you this look that you're seeing on the back of the camera, but it's not wide enough. So what do you do when it's just not wide enough for you to fit in the composition that you want? Well, that's when you have to do a stitched multi-shot panorama. So let me just loosen this ball head. I'll show you what I'm going to do here. Okay, so in order for me to get the composition that I actually want, I'm going to have to do this composition in 3 frames, I think. So that's going to be my first frame, the one that you're looking at right there. And then I'll move the camera down to somewhere like that, shoot the bottom frame, and then I'll go back up. And then I'll just move the camera up here to the top of the frame, even though most of it is just a complete blur. That's okay, really. The focus is on this part of the composition here. Even though that top third will be completely blurred, it still should stitch together and give me the composition that I want. Anyway, I'll get this shot, and then I think there's a couple of more spots where I'll do a similar sort of thing with a shallow depth of field pano, and then I'll go back to that favourite tree that I was working on last night.
So the final stitched image ended up being almost a square, simply because I just liked the look of it. And I can't wait to go back in the autumn and reshoot this with fall colours. But what about that other tree that so enchanted me yesterday?
So obviously I'm back at this super gnarly tree. I love it, can't get enough of it. But what I've decided to do now is I'm shooting with the super wide, which is the 14 to 24, and I've got it at 14mm. So I want to give you this. I think this is quite an important compositional tip. Now, it's kind of subjective. This is just my own thoughts on the subject, but I think it'll help you, especially with forest photography or city photography where you're using a super wide angle lens, because with something like a 14mm, you'll find on the edges of your frames these, if it's cityscapes, it'll be buildings. If it's a forest, it'll be trees. You'll find them kind of leaning in from the edges of the frames, or just half of the tree kind of creeping in. Sometimes that looks good if you can get everything where you want it, but that's the challenge, especially with this kind of forest photography. So what I'm going to demonstrate to you now is always pay attention to the edges of the frames. So let's just say this was your composition. You love that composition, you love the placement of that tree. What I can't stand, what drives me crazy when I'm looking at my images afterwards, if I miss it, is these guys, these trees that just kind of creep into the edge of the frame. So you've got this one here, and then on the opposite side, you've got that one there. So my philosophy is, you've got to be ruthless. Make a decision. Is it in or is it out? Having the tree sort of half in and half out, it kind of looks like you were indecisive or sloppy in your composition. So for me, I would always position my composition so that either that tree is, you know, it's part of the composition, quite obviously, or it's not part of the composition. I would always avoid this kind of thing where it's kind of like, well, make your mind up. Is it in or is it out? Which one is it? So this is the challenge with 14 millimeters or 16 millimeter lenses. What you have to do, there's really only two things you can do. You can either change your sort of horizontal positioning so that it just has, and I kind of like that. I kind of like that positioning of these trees leaning in and that one there, so that they're part of the composition. Or if you decide that they're not part of the composition and you just can't quite position it horizontally, you're going to have to use the old zoom and zoom past them. So look at that, look how simple that composition got. I just excluded those elements by zooming beyond it, and now it's simplified the edges of the frame. What I'm trying to illustrate to you here is that ruthlessness. It's either orient the camera so that they're included or excluded, or use that zoom to achieve the same result. So with this composition, I kind of like that actually. I think I might just shoot that, but I'll go back to the full 14. What I was enjoying here was this foreground element here. And it's kind of like I'm trying to avoid, you see, around this rock, there's just lots of trail. And it's not a particularly pretty trail. It's just kind of dirt, random dirt. So I was trying to sort of fill that space. Rather than have a foreground full of random dirt that people tread on, I thought I'd better just position the camera to try and fill that space with something of colour and shape and form. And that's what I've got here with this rock and these ferns. So whether or not I'll compose it like that, or like that, or like that, I'm not sure yet. I've actually just kind of played with this for the last 10-15 minutes whilst trying to record this tutorial. So I'm going to play with this just a little bit longer. I'll probably have to focus stack it because I'm quite close to that foreground. But I reckon it's going to be something like that, and maybe zoom past those messy edges to a nice clean edge of the frame, and I reckon that'll be my composition. If it turns out to be any good, here's a shot.
Okay, so after that, I did change the composition ever so slightly, but did I leave the camera on the tripod, or is this a handheld shot without the tripod? Now, I'm not going to show you the camera settings until later in the video, but post a comment and let me know what you think, and we'll see if you are right later in this video.
So this is somewhat infuriating. Way up on the top of the canyon, I can see mist, I can see fog, but it's high, and I really wish it was down here. But anyway, let me just show you this shot that I've framed up right here. Okay, so this is why I've been whinging on and on about the fog. I needed the fog for this composition, and I spotted this last night when I was just doing those handheld comps, and I thought, wow, I love how intense this looks, but without that fog it's a problem. And the problem is, if you look, because I'm basically shooting way up into the sky, I've got all these white patches up in the top of the frame. Now, I can always just Photoshop those out and just kind of paste in some fake canopy, but you know, I'd rather not fake it, but I probably will. I don't know, we'll see how it looks. But if I'd had fog, and it's so frustrating because I can see it, it's way up on the top of the cliff there. If it just got a bit lower and the fog was coming into these trees, then what you would see is that sort of green colour would just fade off into a pleasing oblivion. rather than these sort of complex looking white splotches, which I can't stand. Fog is just, it's the thing that makes everything easy, and it solves all of your problems. But if we could all just order fog like that, well, we'd do it, wouldn't we? But this is what I've got to deal with. But I do love this composition, and especially what you can see in the foreground there, just this lovely, oh, there, I can see you there, look. You can just see this lovely shape, and I love the colour on the rocks as well. And then in the background, you've got all of that beautiful bright green canopy, and this amazing tree. It's almost like a cat just sort of poised on top of this rock, ready to pounce on something. It's so impressive. To me, that's a photographer's dream, and there's just so much detail and form and colour in this tree. And I really kind of like the trees on the background that are kind of leaning in. And just like that little bit that I filmed earlier, I've tried to frame it up so that they're either excluded or included, and I've included the ones that I feel support this composition and kind of sort of arch in from the edges to almost frame this main tree. So that is the shot. I didn't get the fog that I wanted, but it's still quite a nice composition. So if this turns out to be any good, here's the shot.
Okay, so obviously I adjusted this composition to minimize those white gaps in the canopy by moving away from the tree and angling the camera down slightly. And I like this more because it features just enough of the surrounding area to make a more balanced composition. And maybe this is the handheld shot. Well, let's do a comparison, shall we? One of these images was shot handheld and one was shot on a tripod, but when fully zoomed out like this, it's impossible to tell any difference as far as I can see. So let's magnify these and take a closer look. Okay, so now I've doubled the magnification on both images, and to be honest, I still can't see any difference in sharpness, resolution, or image quality. So let's double the magnification again, and at this zoom ratio, I still can't really tell the difference. However, I may have over sharpened the image on the right. So, are you ready to find out if you were right and which one is the handheld shot? Congratulations to all of those who guessed right. Now, I won't be ditching my tripod anytime soon, but it does make you wonder, if you're not doing long exposures and complicated brackets and focus stacks, do you really need that heavy piece of gear in your camera bag?
Right, so I think we're pretty much done. Our stomachs are growling and it's time to get back to the camper for a chocolate breakfast.
Oh, you already ate that.
Well, what are you having?
Chex. And watermelon.
Ooh, nice watermelon breakfast. Alright, so if you enjoyed this video, please hit the old like button, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to tickle my bell. And I guess we'll see you in the next one. Bye.